Thank you, Victor, and welcome everybody. As Victor mentioned, my company is called EthnoConnect. I know that's an odd kind of name, but what it does is it means that our company helps people increase their sales to the multicultural customer. There's a huge opportunity that you may be missing out there, and that is to reach more customers by looking towards the multicultural market. No part of this country does not have people from other cultures coming to it, already in it, and they want to buy products and services from you. In fact, 1/3 of all Americans today are minorities, and by the year 2042, over half of this country will be composed of minorities. And if you're looking around the world at this program, there's a good possibility that you've got people from other cultures looking to buy products and service from you as well. But there's a couple of challenges when it comes to working with people from different cultures. The first challenge is that people from other countries and other cultures don't buy products and services in the same way. For example, I like to say that in the first 30 seconds, most untrained business owners and salespeople will unintentionally insult their multicultural customers at least 3 times. Now, how does this happen? Because if you insult your customers even once in the first 30 seconds, they're not likely to do business with you. So one of the ways that we commonly insult our multicultural customers is by automatically shaking their hand. We tend to assume, at least in the West, in the United States, Western Europe, Canada, we tend to assume that everybody wants to shake hands. And that's not necessarily true. For example, in the Middle East, in India, for example, and in much of China and other parts of Asia, to even touch someone who is not your relative or your husband could be very insulting, not only to their culture, but also to their social beliefs and maybe even their religion. So what we've got to do is stop making assumptions. In fact, what we've got to do is start thinking like the other person. And maybe even think about the fact that what we do in our own country is not necessarily right. So how do you greet someone from another culture and make them feel comfortable? Well, you want to let them tell you how they want to be greeted. So instead of automatically sticking out your hand, introduce yourself and hesitate for a moment to see what they do. So for example, if I'm greeting you and you come into my store, I would say, "Hi, welcome to our store. I'm Michael Lee." And immediately someone who's not comfortable with our culture will give us the greeting that they're used to. It might be bowing, it might be nothing, and many people will just automatically stick out their hand to shake it, which is absolutely fine. If they do that, go ahead and shake their hand. But if there's a couple, for example, if you've got a man and a woman that comes into your store, again, same greeting. "Hi, I'm Michael Lee. Welcome to our store." And if the man shakes your hand, absolutely go ahead and shake it. But before you turn to the woman, drop your hand to the side and then turn to her. Because you don't want to be shaking, turn to her with your hand out. And if she doesn't want to shake it, it's going to be very embarrassing for you if your hand is outstretched. So that's one of the ways that we can offend people in the first 30 seconds is by assuming that everybody wants to shake your hand. Don't do that. Let them tell you how they want to be greeted by greeting them verbally, hesitating for a moment, and then seeing what kind of greeting they give you. And as Victor mentioned, If you've got questions, go ahead and type it into the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer them about how do you build relationships and how do you do more business with people from different cultures. What would be another common way that we might offend people? Oh, it's very simple. Looking them directly in the eye. In the Western culture, looking people in the eye is thought of as very common, very respectful. In fact, in the Western culture, looking someone directly in the eye says, I'm paying attention to you. I'm showing you respect. But again, in other cultures, it may not mean that. In some cultures, particularly the Asian culture, the Native American culture, for example, to look somebody in the eye is rude. And so to show us respect, what folks from these cultures may do is look down when they're talking to you. Now, I know this is very uncomfortable for most Westerners, so what we try to do is we try to get eye contact with them. Don't do that. If they look down, you simply look down. Because if you try and get eye contact from somebody who's looking down, they can feel it. And it's a lack of respect for them. And the last thing we do, or the third thing we do, and there's others as well, the third thing we do that often insults our multicultural customers is standing too close or too far away when we're talking to them. Now, I know this is very subtle, but it's something that people can feel immediately. I know you've had it happen when somebody stands too close to you and gets in your face. What do we naturally do? We back up. Well, many cultures have different ideas or different beliefs about how far is too far and how close should you stand when you're talking to them. For example, in Japan, people are very formal there. And so they will bow or shake hands with you or both, and then they will step back a little bit to give themselves a little more personal space than most Americans are used to. Now, if they do that, what many untrained American business people and salespeople will do is they'll step forward to a more comfortable space for them. Well, that's way too close for the Japanese person. They'll step back. The American will step forward. The person will step back, and you'll end up chasing them all over the store. The opposite is true of other cultures that like a lot closer personal space. So, for example, people in the Middle East, they will shake hands or bow or even give you a hug, and then they'll step forward. Now, for an American, this can be extremely close and way too close for us. So what do? We step back. They step forward, we step back, and they'll end up chasing us all over the store or your office. Now, I know this seems like a very subtle thing, this personal space thing. But again, if you've ever had someone violate your personal space, you know how uncomfortable it could make you feel. So recognize that a lot of companies in the United States, in Canada, in Western Europe are missing a huge opportunity to do business with people from other cultures. One of the things that we often do is we often assume that people from other cultures don't want to do business with us because we're not from their culture. Unless there's a tremendous language barrier, that isn't true at all. People are happy to do business with you, again, as long as they're treated with sensitivity to their culture. But again, if you insult them 1, 2, or even 3 times or more in the first couple of minutes that you meet them, they're just not going to feel comfortable enough to do business with you. In fact, there are some people and some cultures that deliberately look for someone outside of their own culture to do business with. Now, why would this be? Well, let's take real estate, for example. In real estate, a lot of minority groups deliberately look for a salesperson who's not from their culture because they're afraid if they give up their personal financial information, like how much do they make? How much property do they own? How much money do they owe other people? If they give that up to someone from their own culture, they're afraid that that person might spread that information around their community, sort of like a minority internet. Now, whether that's true or not, that's a fear on the part of many people. So recognize that people from other cultures are happy to do business with you as long as they're treated with sensitivity to their culture. So again, just a quick reminder. When you first meet somebody from another culture, don't automatically stick out your hand to shake it. Don't look for direct eye contact if there isn't any. And if they step back or forward after your greeting, stand your ground. Don't you move to a distance that's more comfortable for you, because when they step forward or back, they're telling you, this is my distance at which I feel comfortable. So these are just a couple of things that help people to just feel more comfortable. And by the way, these things we're talking about are things that basically will make anybody feel comfortable. So basically what I like to say is that good customer service is good customer service. And one of our people on the line says, I've seen this in the mortgage business. And it's very, very common. Anywhere where you're dealing with people's money, they don't want to work with somebody from their own culture because, again, they're afraid of that privacy issue. And it's true in medical care. It's even true in insurance sales. Because as you know, in insurance sales, if you want to apply for insurance, you have to fill out an extremely lengthy health questionnaire. Have you ever smoked? Have you ever been sick? Does anybody in your family have heart problems? And again, many people from other cultures are concerned that if they give up their personal health information to someone from their own culture, that they might spread that information around their own community. So often what they do is they'll look for someone as far out of their own community as possible. I have a lot of Hispanics who have been my clients over the years in various industries because they'll look at me and they'll think, boy, this guy probably knows very few people in the Hispanic community because he's Asian. And by the way, I forgot to mention, I am Asian, but I'm not the kind of Asian that you often meet that are new immigrant Asians. Actually, I'm a fifth generation Chinese American. My great-great-grandfather came to the United States in 1855. So I'm as American as anybody. In fact, I'm so American, I don't even speak Chinese. Thanks to the California public school system, I speak Spanish. So don't tell my Hispanic clients that because I sometimes like to listen in on their conversations in Spanish when they think that I don't understand what they're saying. Now, if you're going to be working with multicultural customers, there is something that you've got to be very much aware of. One of the biggest challenges when you're working with people from other cultures is what I like to call bargaining or haggling. Bargaining and haggling just drive Westerners crazy. In fact, it drives them so crazy that I actually wrote a book about it. It's called Black Belt Negotiating. There's two types of countries in the world. There are negotiating countries and non-negotiating countries. Guess what the United States, Canada, England, Germany, France, are. We are non-negotiating countries. We only negotiate the biggest ticket items, and we don't really like it. We will negotiate things like cars and houses, and that's it. Whereas in other countries, like in Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and other countries, in fact, most of the countries around the world, they are negotiating countries where they will negotiate absolutely everything all day long. And I mean everything, from the clothes they buy to the food they eat, and everything in between. People in negotiating countries will negotiate all day long. And this drives Westerners crazy. So what do you do about it? Well, one thing you can't do about it is you can't tell people, I don't negotiate. Because to them, it's like breathing air. They negotiate all day long. And if you say, I don't negotiate, they're thinking you're probably lying. Because in their country, in their culture, they negotiate absolutely everything. So the only solution to this is to become a much better negotiator. And so one of the things you can do to become a better negotiator, there are some basic rules in my book, Black Belt Negotiating, but number one rule is to recognize that everything is negotiable. And I mean everything. And I give seminars all over the country, not only on negotiating, but how to sell to people from other cultures. But when I say everything is negotiable, everybody stops me and says, Michael, but what about taxes? Well, I say taxes, at least let's take federal income taxes. They're not negotiable unless you owe a lot of money to the IRS. If you owe a lot of money, there is a special program for you at the IRS called the Offer in Compromise Program, where special IRS agents will actually negotiate how much money they'll take from you, because the IRS is pretty smart. They know that, like any other business, if they can get a few bucks now rather than maybe nothing later, they'll take it. And I have literally seen people who owed $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 or more pay less than 10% of what they owed to the IRS. But they had to pay it in cash, and they had to pay it up front in order to have the slate wiped clean. So guess what, my friends? You can negotiate taxes. But wait a minute. Many people will often say during my seminars, what about death? Death and taxes, you can't negotiate those. Well, I get discounts on health care. Now, I don't mean I get cheap health care. I get service from the top physicians, the doctors, the dentists in the country. But I make deals with them so that they will give me a good patient discount. And how do I do that? I never make them chase me for a payment. I always pay them by check or by cash. And so they know they're not going to have to worry about anything bouncing or anything else, because I guarantee it's going to clear the bank. They never have to chase me for appointments. I make an appointment, I call them. They never have to follow up to remind me of the appointment, because I tell them, if I don't show up to the appointment, you charge me. In addition, I promise to show up early. I know that sounds crazy, because most of us have to wait for our dentist or our doctor, but I'll show up 45 minutes, an hour early and sit there. Now, if they have an opening in their schedule, they'll just slide me in. If they're late, I will not complain. I'll sit there patiently working on my laptop, reading a book or something else. But I am the ideal patient. And in exchange for that, for coming early, making my own appointments, paying usually by cash. I get the good patient discount. So while I'm not saying that we can cheat death, if you get better health care because you can afford to have better health care, maybe you'll live a little longer. So those are just some of the ideas that I've got for doing business with people from other cultures, and I hope what it has done for you is help you to be a little more comfortable in just dealing with people who may be a little bit different than you, whether they may be older or younger, male or female, from the moon, it doesn't matter. I hope this has helped.